A girl like you doesn't invent things, you steal them. That's all your kind is good for. The racist judge smirked as his nephew Tyler smashed Jasmine Carter's science project to pieces right in front of the entire classroom. Then Tyler slapped her across the face so hard that blood dripped from her lip. The room froze. Security was already on the way. Handcuffs were ready. They thought a brilliant black girl from the wrong side of town would stay silent forever. But they made one fatal mistake. The criminal father they loved to mock wasn't some nobody. He was Marcus Langford, the Attorney General of the United States, and he just walked into that school with a convoy of FBI agents ready to turn everything upside down. Within hours, the arrogant judge who thought he owned the town was the one in handcuffs, begging for mercy in his own courtroom. If you hate bullies, racist power, and corrupt systems getting away with it, stay until the end to see true justice served ice cold. You won't believe how deep this goes. Environmental poisoning, stolen futures, and a conspiracy that crumbles when one girl refuses to break. You definitely don't want to miss what happens when the most powerful man in American law shows up for his daughter.
Here, a chemical reaction followed the same immutable laws, no matter who mixed the reagents. Or at least that was what she kept repeating to herself. Jasmine Carter stood hunched over her lab station, her posture tense and guarded. She was 17, with skin like rich ebony and eyes that carried a quiet, fierce intelligence, while classmates in the hallway chattered about prom dates and varsity jackets. Jasmine was testing water samples taken from the faucets of a run-down apartment building in the heart of the inner city. The vial in her hand contained liquid that appeared crystal clear, yet concealed a deadly secret. Her project, titled The Invisible Poison, Heavy Metal Contamination in Low-Income Neighborhoods, was far more than a school assignment. It was a mission. The quiet shattered abruptly. The double doors burst open with a forceful bang, bouncing hard against the wall stoppers. Tyler Brooks strode in. He didn't merely walk, he stalked, claiming far more space than any one person needed. He wore the school's Letterman jacket, the leather sleeves creaking with every step, a badge of privilege purchased rather than earned. Tyler was handsome in the cold, sculpted way of a marble statue, sharp features devoid of any real warmth. "Ramirez," Tyler barked without glancing at the teachers seated at the front desk. "I need a pass for next period. Coach wants me in the gym." Mr. Ramirez, a man whose back seemed permanently bent from years of deferring to wealthy parents, kept his eyes on his papers. He simply scrawled on a pink hall pass, "Take it, Tyler. Just try to keep it quiet." Tyler snatched the slip, a smirk curling his lips. He didn't leave. Instead, his gaze swept to the back of the room and locked onto Jasmine. The hunter had spotted his target. She felt the weight of his stare like a hand on her shoulder, but she refused to turn. She stayed focused on the titration burette, watching one precise drop of reagent fall into her sample. Pink, clear, pink. "Still messing with your dirty water, Carter?" Tyler's voice was silky smooth, laced with mockery sharper than any yell. He sauntered down the aisle, kicking empty stools as he passed. Clang, clang, clang. Jasmine tightened her fingers around the glass beaker. "It's research, Tyler, something you might grasp if you ever cracked open a book." Tyler stopped right beside her. He smelled of costly cologne mixed with stale smoke. He leaned in close, invading her space, towering over her shoulder. "Research?" he echoed, stretching the word mockingly. "That's what they're calling it now? I figured you were just bottling the stuff you people drink at home." The jab was calculated, meant to put her firmly back in what he considered her place. Jasmine set the beaker down carefully. She turned to face him, her face a calm mask honed over 3 long years at this school. "Do you actually need something, Tyler, or are you just here to waste everyone's air?" Tyler let out a harsh, barking laugh. He reached over and grabbed her lab notebook, the record of 6 months of careful data. Jasmine's pulse pounded in her ears. "Actually, I do need something," Tyler said, flipping through pages he didn't bother to read. "I need the answers to the AP Calc problem set due next period. I heard you finished it in homeroom." "Do your own work," Jasmine replied, her voice steady and even. "Come on, Carter," Tyler sneered. He let the notebook fall onto the wet bench, landing squarely in a puddle of condensation. "We both know why you're really here. The diversity quota has to be met. The school hands you a free ride so we look inclusive. The least you can do is make yourself useful to the ones who actually pay full tuition." The cruelty of it was staggering, not mere bullying, but a complete dismissal of her worth. Jasmine glanced toward Mr. Ramirez. The teacher buried himself deeper in grading papers, acting deaf and blind. No help would come from that direction. "I earned my place here," Jasmine said, her tone dropping lower, deadly calm. "I worked twice as hard as you for half the credit. I'm not handing over my homework. I'm not doing your work for you. Now step out of my light." The room seemed to run out of air. Tyler's lazy arrogance vanished, replaced by icy malice. His jaw tightened. He wasn't accustomed to hearing no. In his world, no was just the opening bid in a negotiation. He grabbed the can of soda he'd smuggled in against lab rules and deliberately tilted it. Dark, sticky liquid spilled across the table edge, splattering Jasmine's clean white sneakers and pooling around her project display. Jasmine gasped and stepped back, but the damage was already done. "Oops," Tyler said, his eyes empty of remorse. "Clumsy me. Guess you'll have to clean that up. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Cleaning up after us." Burning rage surged through Jasmine's chest. She stepped forward, fists clenched. "You're pathetic, Tyler. You think money makes you superior? It just makes you loud." Tyler moved closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You need to learn respect, Carter. You think you can talk to me like that? Do you have any idea who my family is, who my uncle is?" "I don't care about your uncle," Jasmine answered flatly. "You will," Tyler promised. "My Uncle Richard is the reason this school gets its funding. He's the reason your little scholarship even exists. One word from him, and you're right back in the gutter you came from." Satisfied with the fear he assumed he'd instilled, he turned and headed for the door, pausing only to glance back at Mr. Ramirez. "She made the mess, sir. Make sure she cleans it up." Mr. Ramirez nodded weakly. "Jasmine, just wipe it up, please." Tyler shoved through the double doors into the hallway. He didn't head to the gym. Instead, he pulled out his phone, scrolled to a contact labeled simply "The Fixer," and hit call. Phone to his ear, he watched through the glass window as Jasmine knelt to mop up the soda with paper towels, her dignity unbroken, but her position fragile. "Yeah, it's me," Tyler said, eyes fixed on her bowed figure. "We've got a problem. There's this girl here, a nobody. She thinks she's untouchable. She disrespected the family. No, I don't want her scared. I want her gone. I want her life ruined." He paused, listening. Then a cruel smile spread across his face. "Good," Tyler said. "Do it." Principal Harold Vance's office carried the scent of lemon polish and entrenched power. It was a space built to intimidate, walls covered in mahogany shelves filled with books that no one had ever opened.
Behind the massive oak desk, the wall was covered in framed certificates, Administrator of the Year, Excellence in Leadership, and countless other plaques that shone with empty glory. To Jasmine Carter, they seemed less like honors and more like invoices for a conscience traded to the wealthiest donor. Jasmine sat rigidly in a hard wooden chair, her hands clasped firmly in her lap to conceal their slight tremble. She was not alone. Lounging in the comfortable leather guest chair to her right was Tyler Brooks. He appeared completely at ease, one leg crossed over the other, chewing gum with an irritating, rhythmic smack that grated on Jasmine's nerves. He never once glanced her way. He was occupied with inspecting his fingernails, already disinterested in the meeting that hadn't even started. Principal Harold Vance turned his chair to face them. He was a man with soft features and sharp eyes, dressed in a suit that cost more than Jasmine's mother earned in 3 months. He folded his hands on the desk and offered a smile that never touched his gaze. "Carter," Vance began, his voice slick as oil on asphalt, Thank you for coming on short notice. We need to address an urgent matter concerning the state science fair. Jasmine straightened in her seat. Is something wrong with my entry, sir? I followed every rule. The abstract on heavy metal toxicity went in last week. The abstract is quite interesting, Vance replied, though his tone implied it was about as exciting as filing taxes. Truly, however, the school board has updated this year's entry standards. We're placing strong emphasis on collaboration, teamwork, and leadership qualities. He let the words linger like a blade poised to fall. We believe, Vance went on, nodding loosely toward Tyler, that while your project is technically sound, it lacks that collaborative element. It feels solitary. To address this, we've decided your entry will be submitted as a joint effort. Jasmine blinked, convinced she had misheard. Joint? But I worked on it alone. I spent 6 months gathering samples. I performed the analysis. I coded the data visualizations myself. Tyler cut in, finally looking up with a lazy, predatory smile. Don't get lost in the details, Carter. Look at the bigger picture. Tyler Brooks will be listed as your co-author, Vance announced, delivering the decision with casual finality. He will present the results with you on Saturday. The breath rushed out of Jasmine's lungs. It wasn't merely unfair, it was ridiculous. Tyler? She repeated, her voice rising despite her attempt to stay composed. Principal Vance, with all due respect, Tyler couldn't tell arsenic from lead. He only enters the lab to harass me. This is wrong. Vance's smile disappeared. The polite facade slipped, exposing the administrator who hated being challenged. Wrong is a harsh word, Miss Carter. I prefer strategic. Tyler offers certain intangibles, presence, connections. State fair judges aren't only evaluating data. They want a compelling narrative. Tyler helps provide that narrative. I am the narrative, Jasmine pressed, anger overtaking her restraint. My research is the narrative. He contributed nothing. Tyler laughed, a dry and unpleasant sound. He uncrossed his legs and leaned forward, crowding her space without leaving his chair. You still don't understand, do you? You're the worker, Carter. I'm the manager. You collect the data. I make it shine on the display. I'm doing you a favor. Without my name on that board, the judges will walk right past you. You should be grateful, you ungrateful little— Enough, Vance interrupted, aiming his sharpness solely at Jasmine, not Tyler. He lifted a red folder from his desk, the one Jasmine recognized immediately as her scholarship file. Silence fell heavily in the room. The air conditioner's hum became deafening. Vance opened the folder, his finger sliding along a page. The Oak Creek Diversity and Excellence Scholarship has very clear requirements, Carter. It demands outstanding academic performance along with exemplary community spirit and cooperation. Clause 4, Section B. He met her eyes, cold as stone. Refusing to guide a fellow student, refusing to participate in a school-approved joint entry, these could be seen as breaches of the Community Spirit Clause. And if the committee learned you were uncooperative, well, budgets are tight this year. It would be unfortunate if your tuition funding disappeared for next semester. The threat laid bare, no subtlety, no pretense. It was a simple exchange. Surrender the credit or forfeit your future. Jasmine looked from Vance to Tyler. Tyler winked at her. A nauseating understanding settled over her. They didn't just want to claim her work. They wanted to crush her will. They wanted her to agree, to participate in her own erasure. Refusal meant effective expulsion. She couldn't pay the fees. Acceptance meant keeping her spot but sacrificing her principles. Her heart pounded like a caged animal. The injustice burned in her throat, bitter as venom. She wanted to shout, to overturn the massive desk and smash every phony plaque on the wall. But she didn't. She was 17, black and poor in a world designed for people like Tyler Brooks. She understood the price of defiance. Jasmine drew a deep, shaky breath. She unclenched her fists by force. She dropped her gaze to the floor, concealing the fire still burning in her eyes. I understand,
Jasmine said softly. The words tasted like poison. "Excellent," Vance replied brightly, snapping the folder shut. The menace vanished, replaced by false cheer. "I knew you were a team player. Tyler will meet you in the hall Saturday morning. Make sure his name appears on the title card, in large font." "Don't worry, partner," Tyler sneered, rising and stretching. "I'll let you handle the talking. I'll just stand there looking sharp while we hold the trophy." He sauntered out, whistling carelessly. Vance returned to his paperwork, dismissing Jasmine as though she were furniture. She stood, legs heavy, yet her thoughts raced with surprising sharpness. She moved toward the door, slipping a hand into the pocket of her oversized hoodie. Her fingers touched the cool surface of her phone. She felt the faint vibration as she ended the recording. She hadn't simply endured it. From the instant Vance mentioned the scholarship, she had captured every threat, every insult, every coerced admission, now stored securely as an encrypted file. "Thank you, Principal Vance," Jasmine said calmly, her voice free of fear. Vance didn't glance up. "Close the door behind you." Jasmine stepped into the hallway. The clamor of passing period assaulted her. Laughter, shouts, lockers slamming, but it barely registered. She gripped the phone in her pocket like a loaded weapon. They believed they had triumphed. They believed they had muted her. They were mistaken. The fight had only just started. The Oak Creek High School gymnasium had been turned into a bustling maze of trifold displays, bubbling experiments, and anxious energy. The air hung heavy with the scent of floor wax and teenage nerves.
Parents moved about with courteous smiles, quietly assessing the potential of other families' children, while judges clutching clipboards glided through the crowd like predators in a coral reef, determining destinies with a single mark of their pens. Jasmine Carter stood at Station 42. Her display, The Invisible Poison, was a stunning achievement in data presentation. Bold graphs illustrated the clear link between industrial zoning and dangerously high heavy metal levels in the community's groundwater. It provided irrefutable evidence of widespread neglect. Beside her, Tyler Brooks lounged against the table, scrolling on his phone. He wore a suit that cost more than Jasmine's entire closet, yet he managed to look disheveled, tie loosened, posture screaming indifference. His name had been hastily taped over the title card in a sloppy patch that was painfully obvious. "Put the phone away, Tyler," Jasmine said quietly. "The judges are approaching." Tyler kept his eyes on the screen. "Relax, everything's arranged. Just stand there and act appreciative." The crowd near the entrance suddenly parted. A hush spread through the gymnasium like a tide rolling toward Station 42. Judge Richard Brooks had entered. He didn't simply walk, he inspected his domain. Dressed in a charcoal suit with an American flag pin on his lapel, his arrival seemed to drain air from the space around him. In this town, he wasn't merely a judge, he ruled like royalty. He ignored the nervous freshmen demonstrating a volcano eruption and the sophomores showcasing solar panels. He strode directly toward Jasmine. Tyler snapped to attention, pocketing his phone. "Hey, Uncle Richard." Judge Brooks gave his nephew a warm, knowing smile and clapped him on the shoulder. "Looking good, son. Ready to demonstrate what a Brooks can accomplish?" Then he turned to Jasmine. The warmth evaporated, replaced by detached, clinical judgment. He offered no greeting, no introduction. He regarded her as if she were a blemish on an otherwise flawless surface. "So," Brooks said, his voice projecting easily across the room, "this is the project." "Good morning, Your Honor," Jasmine replied, holding herself tall. "Our project examines arsenic and lead levels in the municipal water supply of—" "I can read." Brooks cut her off. He ignored the display entirely, his attention fixed on the equipment, the mass spectrometer printouts, the advanced digital sensors. He lifted one sensor, examining it with theatrical distrust. "This is high-end gear," Brooks remarked. "Costly, well outside the reach of a typical student budget." "I obtained micro-grant from the National Science Foundation," Jasmine explained calmly. "I submitted the application last summer." Brooks let the sensor drop back onto the table with a sharp clatter.
A grant? How curious. And who permitted you to gather samples from private homes? Did you obtain warrants, signed consent from every property owner? I drew samples from public faucets and from volunteers who provided signed waivers, Jasmine answered. She reached for her binder. All the paperwork is right here. Brooks dismissed it with a wave, never opening it. Signatures can be faked. I'm questioning your methods. They appear predatory. He moved closer, crowding her space. His subtle hostility was expertly aimed. He wasn't challenging the science. He was challenging her legitimacy to perform it. You're singling out certain neighborhoods, Brooks declared, loud enough for nearby onlookers to hear. You're fabricating negligence where none exists. This isn't science, it's political agitation. Who encouraged you to pursue this? Who's pushing this narrative? The data's impartial, sir, Jasmine responded, her jaw tightening. Numbers don't carry agendas. District 9's water shows 5 times the toxin levels found in this school's supply. That's simply fact. District 9, Brooks sneered. A rundown area, high turnover, high crime, low property values. Residents there neglect their plumbing, and you want to point fingers at the city, at taxpayers? He turned to the growing crowd, parents, teachers, and students, and opened his arms theatrically. This is the issue with affirmative action programs, Brooks proclaimed, his voice laced with false sympathy. We extend opportunities, and rather than show gratitude, they weaponize them against the very community that sustains them. They bite the hand that feeds. Jasmine felt heat flood her face, but she kept her eyes level. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm revealing a public health emergency. You're inventing a crisis for personal attention, Brooks snapped, his tone hardening. This isn't legitimate science, it's libel. It's a deliberate attack on our local utilities, and I won't allow this school to serve as a stage for dangerous falsehoods. Tyler chuckled beside her. Told you it was a mistake, Carter. Brooks turned to the 2 uniformed resource officers near the doors. He snapped his fingers and pointed at the display. Officers, Brooks ordered, secure this area. The officers paused briefly, then advanced. Power was power. What are you doing? Jasmine demanded, positioning herself in front of her laptop. I'm confiscating this exhibit. I have grounds to suspect it involves stolen data and unauthorized monitoring devices. It's a security concern. That's my personal laptop, Jasmine objected. You have no authority. I have complete authority, Brooks boomed. As chair of the District Ethics Committee, I declare this project invalid and disqualified from the competition now. The officers arrived at the table. One seized the display board. The other reached for the laptop. No! Jasmine gripped the edge of her computer. This belongs to me. You can't seize it. She's resisting, Brooks noted icily. Officer, remove the student if she can't behave. She apparently lacks the self-control expected in an academic environment. The officer pushed Jasmine's hand away roughly. He yanked out the cables and tucked the laptop under his arm. The other officer folded the board, creasing grass Jasmine had perfected over weeks. Jasmine stood motionless, her months of effort stripped away in moments. The onlookers gawked. No one intervened. No one spoke. Teachers stared at the floor. Parents murmured behind cupped hands. They saw exactly what Brooks intended, a disruptive, defiant girl creating chaos, and a firm, authoritative judge restoring calm. Take it to my vehicle, Brooks directed the officers. I'll personally supervise the inquiry into this deception. He glanced at Jasmine one last time. His eyes held no rage, only cold triumph. He hadn't merely dismissed her work, he had turned her intellect into something criminal. You should have stayed with baking soda volcanoes, Brooks murmured, low enough for only her ears. Science belongs to those who comprehend how the world truly operates. He turned and departed, Tyler following obediently like a shadow. Jasmine remained alone at the bare table, the echo of her project haunting the empty space. Yet beneath the shame and disbelief, something new solidified inside her, so she trailed them all the way to the VIP lounge reserved for Judge Richard Brooks during his school visits.
The faculty VIP lounge was a student-free zone, a haven of comfortable armchairs and fresh coffee tucked just off the main gymnasium. It was peaceful here, shielded from the science fair's bustle by a thick oak door. But that peace was about to end. Jasmine Carter burst through the door, breathing hard. She had dashed past teachers who tried to stop her, propelled by a desperation stronger than any fear of punishment. Inside, Judge Richard Brooks was already settled in a leather armchair, while Tyler Brooks leaned against a vending machine, chuckling at something on his phone. Officer Harlan, the school resource officer, stood near the door with arms folded across his tactical vest. "I want my project back," Jasmine demanded. Her voice trembled not from fear, but from the rush of raw injustice. "Right now!" Brooks glanced up, mildly irritated, like someone disturbed from a relaxing break. "You're trespassing, Miss Carter. This room is off limits." "That equipment represents 6 months of my work," Jasmine said, advancing farther inside. She pointed to the confiscated box on the table near Tyler. "It's my property. It's not evidence of anything except your own prejudice. You have no legal basis to keep it." Brooks let out a low, dry chuckle. He pulled a silver cigarette case from his jacket pocket. "Legal basis? You seem to think we're equals, Carter. We're not. In this district, my word is the law." He slipped a cigarette between his lips and lit it. The lighter's flame briefly lit the icy detachment in his eyes. Smoke drifted upward, a blatant breach of school rules that no one in the room would dare mention. "She thinks she's a lawyer now, Uncle Richard," Tyler taunted, pushing off the vending machine. He strolled to the table holding the project box. "She believes she can defy the order of things," Brooks corrected, releasing a cloud of gray smoke. He glanced at Jasmine and gave Tyler a subtle, barely noticeable nod. Tyler caught it instantly. A vicious smile spread across his face. He reached into the box and lifted out the heart of Jasmine's project, the custom filtration unit. It was a fragile structure of glass tubing, 3D printed filters, and sensors she had soldered by hand. "No!" Jasmine lunged forward. Officer Harlan blocked her path, his heavy hand on her shoulder, forcing her back. "Stay back," he growled. Tyler held the device aloft. "You know, this thing looks pretty delicate, almost unstable." "Tyler, don't!" Jasmine begged, her defiance giving way to dread. "Please, that caused everything I had." Tyler didn't pause. With a grunt, he smashed it onto the tiled floor. Crash! The noise was nauseating. Glass exploded into countless shards. Plastic components cracked. The water samples, holding proof of the town's contamination, splashed everywhere, seeping into the grout. The complex circuit board Jasmine had programmed over countless nights skidded across the room, snapped in two. Jasmine stood frozen. The destruction was complete. It wasn't just a school project. It was her escape route. It was her voice. And now it was debris on a grimy floor. "Oops," Tyler laughed, brushing his hands on his pants. "Gravity's tough, huh?" Brooks took another slow drag, watching smoke coil toward the ceiling. "Call it a physics lesson, Carter. What rises too high must come down, especially if it forgets its place." Jasmine sank to her knees. She reached for the fragments, hands shaking. A glass splinter cut her finger, but she barely registered the sting. She tried piecing two plastic parts together, an instinctive, hopeless effort to repair the irreparable. Tears welled, hot and blurring. "Look at her," Officer Harlan sneered, gazing down. His hand hovered near his taser. "Always the same with you people. You break rules, then turn aggressive. When consequences arrive, you play victim." He paced around her, boots grinding glass. "You get loud and think that makes you right," Harlan went on, repeating phrases Jasmine heard on every news broadcast. "Resist authority, then act surprised when it gets rough. If you'd simply accepted the judge's ruling, none of this would have happened. You did this to yourself. Stop pretending the world owes you anything." Those words struck deeper than the shards. "You people? Victim?"
Jasmine went still, her hands slick with tainted water and her own blood, balled into fists in her lap. The tears dried, the grief inside her burned away, replaced by blazing fury. They didn't see a student, they didn't see a scientist, they saw prey. They believed breaking her work would break her spirit. They were mistaken. Jasmine rose slowly. She smeared her bloody palm on her jeans, leaving a dark smear. She lifted her gaze from the floor and met Judge Richard Brooks's eyes directly. The judge was tapping ash onto the tiles when he stopped. The expression in the girl's eyes had shifted. Fear was gone. What remained was cold, deliberate, and formidable. "You think you just destroyed a toy?" Jasmine said. Her voice was low, unnervingly calm. "But you just removed the last reason I had to stay civil." "Is that a threat?" Brooks asked, eyes narrowing. "You will pay for this," Jasmine promised. "Every one of you." Tyler's face reddened, his smugness fracturing. He hated being looked at as if she were the judge and they the accused. "What did you just say?" Tyler bellowed, reverting to raw aggression. He clenched his fists and charged at her. "Threaten us? I'll silence you for good." The slap rang out louder than shattering glass, a sharp crack echoing off the lounge's sterile tiles, drowning out the vending machine's hum.
Jasmine Carter's head whipped to the side. The impact disrupted her balance completely, sending her collapsing to the floor amid the ruins of her life's effort. She tasted blood. A thin stream began to flow from her split lip, staining her chin. For a moment, the room hung in stunned silence. Even Tyler Brooks appeared briefly shocked by his own brutality, his hand still raised, palm tingling from the strike. But Jasmine refused to stay down. Tears welled in her eyes, yet they were not born of grief. They were tears of raw, concentrated rage. She was 17. She had obeyed every rule. She had studied through nights while others partied, and here she was, bleeding on the floor beneath a mediocre bully in a Letterman jacket. The unfairness felt like a crushing weight on her chest, making breathing impossible. She pushed herself up. Adrenaline surged through her veins, overriding the ache in her jaw. She didn't plan, she simply acted. With a primal cry of outrage, Jasmine lunged and shoved Tyler with all her strength. It caught him completely off guard. Tyler, overconfident and unsteady, staggered backward, his hips slamming hard against the edge of the heavy oak table. He yelped in pain, clutching his side, face contorted with humiliation. The power in the room flipped in an instant. The hunter had been struck back. Tyler regained his footing. His face turned a deep, ugly red. He glanced at Judge Richard Brooks, then back at Jasmine. The humiliation of being physically challenged by a girl, by this girl, was unbearable. "You bitch!" Tyler spat, voice shaking with fury. "You think you can lay hands on me?" This time he didn't slap her. He closed in and shoved her down again. Jasmine crashed to the floor, her elbow smacking the tile sharply. Before she could recover, Tyler's costly sneakers struck her ribs. Jasmine gasped, curling protectively around her midsection. "You dare threaten my uncle?" Tyler yelled, landing another kick to her thigh. "You dare touch me? Look at you now. Who pays the price?" Officer Harlan observed the beating with thumbs hooked casually in his belt. He made no effort to intervene. He didn't pull Tyler away. He watched the assault with the detached curiosity of someone viewing a game. Judge Richard Brooks drew a long, deliberate drag on his cigarette. He released a plume of blue smoke toward the ceiling, eyes calculating and cold. He waited until Tyler had spent his rage, until the boy stepped back panting, puffed up with the illusion of manhood from striking a girl. Then Brooks spoke. "Officer," Brooks said, his tone calm, commanding, and completely merciless, "secure the prisoner." "Prisoner?" Jasmine wheezed, clutching her side. "You just assaulted a student before a judicial officer and a law enforcement professional," Brooks declared, adjusting his suit lapel. "I saw it clearly, an unprovoked attack on my nephew." "He struck me first," Jasmine cried out, voice breaking. "He destroyed my property."
I saw no such thing, Brooks lied smoothly. He turned to Harlan. Did you witness anything, officer? I saw the girl shove the boy, Your Honor, Harlan answered robotically. Clear assault. Harlan moved then, not to assist Jasmine. He seized her arm, wrenching it behind her back and forcing her cheek against the cold, chemical-scented linoleum. He planted his knee in the middle of her back, pressing until she cried out in pain. Stop resisting, Harlan barked, the routine line of those demanding absolute compliance. He drew zip ties from his vest. He didn't bother with proper handcuffs. He tightened the plastic restraints until they cut into her skin. Jasmine lay pinned, face against the grimy floor, staring at a glass fragment from her ruined project. The ache in her ribs throbbed dully, but the agony in her soul was far worse. This was the system her father had warned her about, the one that shielded the Tylers of the world while turning girls like her into criminals. She drew a shallow breath. She ceased struggling. She went limp, conserving her strength. I want my phone call, Jasmine said. Her voice was muffled against the floor, but clear enough. I have the right to a call. Brooks laughed, a harsh, belittling sound that scraped her nerves. He stepped over and loomed above her, gazing down as if she were an insect under glass. Rights? Brooks mocked. You lost those when you turned violent, young lady. And who would you even call? Your parents? Those people probably can't scrape together bail money. He bent closer, his face inches away, the stench of tobacco overpowering. Let's be real, Carter, Brooks whispered, his words laced with poisonous racism masked as frankness. People like you, the fathers usually aren't around, are they? In prison? Or did he simply vanish when life got tough? The barb struck with deadly accuracy. It was designed to shatter her. It was crafted to reinforce every ugly stereotype in his narrow, prejudiced mind. But he had committed a critical mistake. He presumed he knew her story. Jasmine didn't yell. She didn't curse. An eerie calm washed over her. My phone, Jasmine repeated, her voice hardening like steel, is in my pocket. If you refuse the call, you're violating the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. Even you know that would get any case dismissed before it reaches court. Brooks hesitated. He blinked, surprised. He hadn't anticipated a constitutional citation from a girl pinned face down. He straightened, irritated. Let her make the call, Brooks said, dismissing it with a wave. Let her phone her mother. It'll be entertaining to hear the tears. Harlan hauled Jasmine to her knees. He sliced the tie on her right wrist, but left the left fastened to her belt loop. Keep it short, Harlan grumbled. Jasmine reached into her pocket with a trembling hand. She retrieved her phone. The screen was cracked in a web pattern, obscuring the background, but it still illuminated. The call connected. A deep, authoritative voice answered immediately. Jasmine, is that you? The voice rumbled, edged with worry. Jasmine looked at Brooks. She looked at Tyler. She looked at Harlan. She inhaled deeply, tasting blood on her lip. Daddy, Jasmine said, her voice firm and clear, I need you to come to the school right now. The midday sun blazed down on the asphalt of Oak Creek High School parking lot, heating the surface until waves of shimmer rose from it. It was a relentless, revealing light that hid nothing. The tears drying on Jasmine Carter's cheeks, the blood smear on her chin, and the smug triumph etched across Judge Richard Brooks's face. Officer Harlan shoved Jasmine forward, his fingers digging painfully into her arm with needless brutality. She stumbled, her sneakers scraping the gravel. Move it, Harlan growled, relishing the display of dominance. He escorted her toward the rear of his worn patrol cruiser, an aging Crown Victoria, long past its prime. You can reflect on your behavior in a holding cell. Judge Richard Brooks remained on the sidewalk, observing the scene like a monarch overlooking a subdued territory. He glanced at his watch, a gold piece that caught the sunlight. Be sure to charge her with assault on a minor and vandalism of school property, officer, Brooks called out almost cheerfully. I want the forms processed before lunch. Yes, Your Honor, Harlan answered. He swung open the back door of the cruiser. The inside reeked of old sweat and harsh cleaner. "Get in!" Jasmine paused. The car's metal frame burned hot against her leg. She glanced back at the school, at windows lined with students witnessing her degradation. She looked at Tyler Brooks, who lounged against the wall with an ice pack pressed to his side, yet wore a predatory grin. "I said get in," Harlan barked, forcing her head down with his palm. Then everything changed. It began with a sound. Not the lazy wail of a local siren, but a sharp, piercing whoop-whoop slicing through the air. It was accompanied by the powerful roar of high-performance engines. Harlan froze. Brooks frowned, shielding his eyes from the glare. From around the corner of the main entrance, a convoy emerged. 4 massive black Chevrolet Suburbans with darkened windows and government plates roared into the parking lot. They maneuvered with chilling accuracy, a coordinated phalanx of steel and power. The lead vehicle veered sharply, blocking the lane and breaking inches from Harlan's cruiser's bumper, trapping him completely. The remaining 3 fanned out, closing every escape route and transforming the school driveway into a federal zone. Doors burst open before the tires fully stopped. "Federal agents, hands, show me your hands." The orders overlapped in a deafening chorus. Men and women in navy windbreakers, bearing bright yellow FBI letters, streamed from the vehicles. They weren't drawing sidearms. They carried carbine rifles at low ready, fingers poised near triggers. Their actions were smooth, rehearsed, and deadly. Officer Harlan, accustomed to ruling his small domain, suddenly found himself outmatched. He raised his hands at once, retreating from Jasmine as though she carried contagion. "Don't shoot!" Harlan shouted, voice breaking. "I'm law enforcement, on duty." "Step away from the suspect," a lead agent roared, advancing on Harlan with rifle raised. "Get on the ground now." Judge Richard Brooks's mouth fell open. His cigarette dropped from his lips, rolling untouched on the concrete. He staggered back a step, color draining from his face. "What is the meaning of this? I'm a judge. You can't simply back up," another agent commanded, aiming a rifle at Brooks. "Against the wall, now." Pandemonium reigned, a storm of barked orders and pounding boots on asphalt. At the eye of it, Jasmine stood motionless, the zip ties cutting into her wrists. She watched the lead SUV's door swing open. The yelling quieted. An unnatural stillness settled as a man emerged. He stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, filling a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His presence parried a weight that diminished the agent's frenzy. He straightened his cufflinks, expression carved from granite. It was Marcus Langford. He didn't resemble a panicked parent racing to rescue his child. He looked like divine retribution in bespoke Italian fabric. He surveyed the scene, eyes dark and impenetrable. Then his gaze found Jasmine. He noted the swelling bruise on her cheek, the blood on her lip, and finally the plastic restraints binding her wrists behind her back. The granite facade fractured. For an instant, raw anguish crossed his features, the torment of a father witnessing his daughter's pain. But it vanished swiftly, supplanted by icy, fearsome rage. This was no ordinary father. This was the United States Attorney General, the nation's top law enforcement official, and he had located his adversaries. He strode past the armed agents. He passed the cringing Tyler Brooks. He went directly to Officer Harlan, who trembled on the pavement. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He had no need. His tone was a deep, resonant thunder, calm and dreadful. "Officer," Marcus said, towering over him. Harlan whipped up, sweat streaming down his face. "Sir, I didn't know." Marcus cut off the excuse. He pointed firmly at Jasmine. "Remove those restraints from my daughter," Marcus ordered. At once, Harlan fumbled at his belt, hands shaking so violently he dropped his cutter twice. "Yes, sir. Immediately, sir." He lurched up and cut the plastic. Jasmine's arms dropped free. She massaged her wrists, grimacing. Marcus moved closer and enveloped her in his embrace. He held her firmly, one hand cradling her head, shielding her face against his chest so she wouldn't glimpse the fury in his eyes. "I'm here, baby girl. I've got you." Jasmine released a sob she'd suppressed for hours, gripping his lapels tightly. Marcus held her a moment longer, then eased her back. He turned. The gentleness disappeared.
The prosecutor emerged. He faced Judge Richard Brooks, who stared in growing recognition and dread. Brooks knew that face from television, from headlines. Marcus Langford approached Brooks. The FBI agents parted like a biblical sea to clear his path. He halted 3 feet away, mirroring the personal invasion Brooks had inflicted on Jaswine. "You must be Richard Brooks." It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. Brooks swallowed audibly, throat working. "Mr. Attorney General, this is a routine school discipline issue." "The girl was aggressive." "The girl," Marcus echoed, voice lowering to a lethal whisper, "is Jasmine Carter, and I want answers. Who authorized the assault, restraint, and denial of counsel to a minor on federal grounds?" He shifted his gaze from Brooks to the shaken Harlan, then to the once cocky Tyler, now cowering behind a dumpster. "Well?" Marcus demanded, his words ringing across the hushed lot. "I'm waiting." The principal's office had been taken over. What had been a monument to average administration and cold bureaucracy was now a Department of Justice command post. The framed wards on the walls seemed to diminish under the silent, precise movements of the FBI agents.
They cleared the room for bugs, established encrypted connections, and converted the heavy oak desk into a tactical hub. Marcus Langford stood at the window, his back to the others. Outside, the flickering lights of local police cars were giving way to the sleek black SUVs of the federal convoy. He observed as Judge Richard Brooks was led not to a cell, but to a temporary holding space in the library. His objections were muffled by the thick glass. Brooks continued ranting about jurisdiction, demands for calls to senators, accusations of federal overreach. He was a man utterly convinced of his own invincibility, certain his judicial robe could repel even the Attorney General of the United States. He was mistaken, yet still dangerous. "He's still running his mouth," an aide reported, setting a tablet on the desk. "Threatening to sue the department for illegal detention. Claims he was only safeguarding school safety." "Let him speak," Marcus replied, turning to face the room. His expression was impenetrable, a granite mask concealing the paternal fury simmering underneath. The more he talks, the tighter the noose he ties around his own neck. Jasmine Carter sat in the corner, sipping from a cup of water. A medic had treated the cut on her lip and applied ice to her bruised ribs. She appeared small beneath the oversized FBI windbreaker draped over her shoulders, but her gaze remained keen and alert. On the table before her lay the remnants of her project: shattered glass tubing, fractured circuit boards, scattered plastic fragments that Tyler Brooks had crushed with evident satisfaction. To most, it resembled mere rubbish. To the casual observer, it was nothing more than damaged school materials, but Marcus understood its true value. He approached and lifted a piece of the data logger. "They didn't simply want to damage it, Jasmine," Marcus said gently. "They wanted to obliterate it." Tyler relished the cruelty, yes, but Brooks, he was methodical. He directed the officer to seize the laptop. He attempted to eliminate the backup sensors. Marcus regarded his daughter. "Why?" Jasmine responded without words. She reached into her jeans pocket and withdrew a small silver USB drive. It was scuffed and scratched, yet the port remained functional. It was her emergency backup, a precaution learned from navigating a world that frequently sought to diminish her achievements. "Because of this," she said. She inserted the drive into the secure laptop the agents had prepared. The display illuminated. A detailed map of Oak Creek materialized, a topographic view, color-coded by district. What emerged was far beyond a student project. It was a formal accusation. The data told its story silently, more powerfully than any testimony. Red markers dotted the map, each denoting a water sample Jasmine had gathered over 6 months. In the wealthier areas where Tyler resided, where manicured golf courses and smooth roads prevailed, the markers were sparse. The water was safe.
But as the view panned to the hollows, the low-income South Side neighborhoods, the screen turned crimson. The test results exposed catastrophic levels of arsenic and lead. Concentrations weren't merely raised, they exceeded EPA limits by 50 times. It amounted to gradual, deliberate mass harm. The toxins were invisible, flavorless, lethal, infiltrating children's bodies and triggering the very cognitive and behavioral problems that men like Brooks ridiculed in court. Yet the deepest outrage, the revelation transforming tragedy into criminality, resided in the pattern. The red markers didn't disperse haphazardly. They clustered precisely, forming an unmistakable plume leading to one origin. The pollution stemmed from wetlands bordering the industrial zone. On the map, the site was marked Green Cycle Solutions, a purported recycling facility promoted as an environmentally responsible operation. An aide typed swiftly, accessing corporate records for Green Cycle Solutions. Layers of shell entities dissolved like onion skins. Green Cycle belonged to Oak Creek Holdings, itself a subsidiary of the Brooks Family Trust. The truth struck the room like a tangible force. Judge Richard Brooks wasn't merely a biased authority guarding his pride. He was the primary owner of the plant poisoning the community's vulnerable residents. The motive crystallized with chilling clarity. Brooks hadn't targeted Jasmine simply because she was a black student with an ambitious project. He targeted her because she had inadvertently become an investigator, stumbling upon his crime scene. Her modest science effort had accidentally charted the seepage from his unlawful toxic waste site. He wasn't defending school standards. He was safeguarding his wealth. He was safeguarding his liberty. Every slur he had flung at her acquired darker intent. When he labeled her community transient or impure, he was rationalizing the poison he supplied them. He required them to appear subhuman so no one would investigate their illnesses and deaths. Silence blanketed the office. Agents fixed their stares on the display, absorbing the scale of the depravity. A judge pledged to justice was systematically contaminating potential jurors to cut disposal costs. Marcus gazed at the map. The expanse resembled blood. He followed the contamination path from the Brooks facility to the South District Elementary School. He knew, Marcus murmured, he knew precisely what flowed through those pipes. Jasmine studied the map, viewing her creation no longer as homework, but as an instrument of revelation. "He told me to learn my place," she said, voice quivering fondly. He feared my place was exposing him. Marcus stood taller. Grief faded from his eyes, supplanted by the unyielding resolve of a seasoned prosecutor. He fastened his jacket button. He surveyed the map, then his daughter, then the awaiting federal team. This was no longer mere bullying. It was no longer solely a rights infringement. It was a conspiracy striking at the community's foundation. Marcus approached the desk and laid his palm flat on the surface. The impact rang sharp and final, like a gavel strike. "Secure that drive," Marcus commanded, his words carrying the full authority of the federal government. "Issue subpoenas for the Brooks Family Trust, freeze all assets, and contact the EPA without delay." He glanced toward the door behind which Brooks was detained. "They didn't merely harass a child. They are poisoning an entire community. Gentlemen, this is now a federal investigation."
The wheels of justice turn deliberately, but the mechanisms of corruption operate with alarming swiftness. Despite the incriminating map on Jasmine's laptop, Judge Richard Brooks was not behind bars. Just 2 hours after his detention, he exited to a side door of the precinct. His attorney, a polished figure named Pinter, whose suits cost more than a teacher's yearly pay, had cited a technical flaw in the arrest procedure. A local magistrate, an old golfing companion of Brooks, approved release on bail without hesitation.
Brooks didn't head home. He climbed into his black sedan, face ashen yet eyes wild. He placed a single call. "It's me," Brooks whispered urgently into the phone, gripping the wheel until his knuckles blanched. "They know about the water. Initiate the protocol. Destroy everything. Burn it all." Back in the improvised command post at the high school, the atmosphere was heavy. Marcus Langford paced the room, tie slackened, sleeves pushed up. He understood the implications of Brooks's freedom. "He's buying time," Marcus informed the assembled agents. "He realizes we require a warrant to raid the Green Cycle facility. By the time a federal judge approves it, the site will be scrubbed clean, documents shredded, drives destroyed." Jasmine sat near the window, gazing as the sun sank lower. The unfairness choked her. A man could contaminate an entire community and stroll free simply because he knew the right people to contact. She shut her eyes, reviewing the past 6 months of torment inflicted by Tyler. The taunts, the pushes, the endless boasting. "Focus," she urged herself. "Tyler never stops talking. He's overconfident. He believes he's invincible." What did he mention? A recollection emerged. It was 2 months earlier in the cafeteria. Tyler had been boasting to his football teammates, voice loud enough for everyone to hear, about his new jet ski. "My uncle got it for me," Tyler had crowed. "We take it out on the private lake behind the plant. It's great. The water stays warm even in winter. Uncle Richard says that's the smell of money." Jasmine's eyes flew open. "Dad," she called, her words slicing through the agent's discussions. Marcus halted his pacing. "What is it, Jasmine?" "Tyler bragged about a lake," Jasmine explained, rising to her feet. "He mentioned riding jet skis on a private lake behind the Green Cycle plant. He said the water remains warm in winter." Marcus furrowed his brow. "There are no natural lakes in that industrial area. It's nothing but concrete and drains." "Precisely," Jasmine replied, thoughts accelerating. "It's not a lake. It's an unpermitted retention pond. Warm water indicates ongoing chemical activity. That's where they're disposing of the waste before it leaches into the aquifer." Marcus turned to the wall map. He followed the boundary of the Green Cycle site. There, concealed by thick trees in the satellite imagery, lay a dark, unmoving body of water. It appeared on no official plans. "If that pond is real," Marcus stated, "it constitutes a clear breach of the Clean Water Act. That provides probable cause for an immediate entry. No warrant required for an ongoing environmental threat." He addressed his senior agent. "Assemble the team. We're going now." As the tactical unit prepared, Marcus sent another group to the town hall archives. They required documentation. At town hall, Mrs. Ellison, the court clerk, was preparing to close for the evening. She was a slight woman with graying hair and a nervous twitch in her left eye. When 2 FBI agents entered, she fumbled and dropped her keys. "We require the original deeds for the Green Cycle Industrial Park," one agent stated, showing his credentials, "and the zoning approvals signed by Judge Brooks." Mrs. Ellison shook. She knew Brooks well. She knew the consequences of opposing him. "The records are restricted." "The judge is under federal scrutiny," the agent replied, calmly yet firmly. "You can assist us, Mrs. Ellison, or face a grand jury for obstruction." Mrs. Ellison glanced at the badge, then at the framed photo of her grandchildren on her desk. She decided. "He phoned me 10 minutes ago," she murmured, voice unsteadily. "He ordered me to destroy the 2015 zoning change, the one that redesignated wetlands for toxic waste." "Did you destroy it?" the agent inquired. Mrs. Ellison retrieved a creased, aged document from her bag. "No, I was too frightened. Here." The agent accepted the paper. It bore Brooks's unmistakable signature, permitting the toxic pond. "Contact the director," the agent told his colleague. "We have the documentary evidence." Meanwhile, the line of black SUVs raced along the highway toward the industrial sector. The scenery changed from Oak Creek's tidy lawns to the corroded fencing and barren lots of the factory district. Jasmine rode in the rear of her father's vehicle. She stared ahead. "Dad," she said, gesturing through the windshield, "look." Marcus followed her point. Far off above the treetops near the Green Cycle plant, thick black smoke billowed upward. It wasn't ordinary factory vapor. It was dense, acrid smoke from burning chemicals. "He's not just cleaning the site," Marcus muttered, seizing the radio. "He's incinerating it." "All units, increase speed," Marcus directed. "Suspect is destroying evidence through arson. Fire services are en route, but we must lock down the area before he eradicates everything." The convoy accelerated, sirens blaring. They reached the Green Cycle Services gates as the sun grazed the horizon. The sight was hellish. Flames consumed the primary warehouse, bright orange flares dancing across the roof and scattering embers into the twilight. Heat pulsed intensely, even through the vehicle's reinforced windows. But the true nightmare lay beyond the structure, visible through fence openings. Jasmine spotted the pond Tyler had boasted about. It was a foul, shimmering cesspool of waste, and at its edge, outlined against the blaze, stood 3 silhouettes. One doused gasoline over stacks of document boxes. Another hammered hard drives with a sledgehammer. The third, overseeing the frantic erasure with desperate intensity, was Judge Richard Brooks. Sweat-socked, jacket discarded, tie loosened, he resembled a deranged conductor orchestrating ruin. He was torching the town's future to preserve his own. "Crash the gate," commanded Marcus. The front SUV rammed the chain-link barrier, ripping it apart. The vehicle screeched to a stop on gravel. Brooks whirled, eyes bulging in panic as agents emerged, firearms ready. The inferno roared behind him, framing his last reckless act. He clutched a lighter, hovering over the final container of proof. "Drop it!" Marcus shouted, amid waves of heat. "It's finished, Brooks. Drop it!" Brooks eyed the lighter, then the advancing agents. A warped grin twisted his features. "You can't prove a thing if it's ashes," Brooks bellowed against the fire's thunder. He flung the lighter.
The interrogation room at the FBI field office presented a bleak antithesis to Principal Harold Vance's lavish office. Gone were the elegant mahogany bookshelves lined with untouched volumes, the ostentatious framed commendations, and the indulgent leather armchairs that spoke of comfort and control. In their place stood only a chilled steel table fixed permanently to the concrete floor and a large two-way mirror that mercilessly reflected Vance's own pallid, panicked countenance back at him. Principal Harold Vance hunched forward in his seat, wrist secured by cold cuffs to the table's restraining bar. Profuse sweat beaded on his forehead and soaked through the collar of his once crisp, expensive shirt, leaving dark stains that betrayed his mounting dread. Deprived of all the accoutrements of his position, he seemed shrunken and insignificant, revealing the timid, opportunistic figure he had always been, now trapped in the consequences of a web he had willingly helped weave. Seated across from him was Special Agent Miller, a composed woman known for her economy of speech and complete absence of warmth. She deposited a substantial dossier onto the table with a deliberate, resounding impact that echoed slightly in the barren space. "I am an educator," Vance blurted out, his voice climbing in pitch from sheer alarm. "I have devoted 20 years of service to this community. You cannot possibly treat me like some common felon. I demand immediate access to the superintendent." "The superintendent is presently being questioned regarding his forged signatures on fraudulent grant submissions," Agent Miller replied with unflinching composure. She calmly opened the thick file, spreading its contents slightly for emphasis. "You are not here to debate administrative policies, Mr. Vance. You are here as an implicated co-conspirator in a federal racketeering prosecution." "Racketeering?" Vance let out a strained, incredulous chuckle. "That is preposterous. I administer a high school. I'm merely urged a student toward greater collaboration. That falls squarely within my professional duties." Miller leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. "We have evidence that you coerced Jasmine Carter into crediting Tyler Brooks when her independent project. We have proof you leveraged her scholarship as intimidation. That constitutes extortion." "It was merely guidance," Vance protested stubbornly, attempting to mop his sweating brow against his constrained shoulder. Tyler required additional academic reinforcement. Jasmine needed to develop skills in teamwork and compromise. It was purely a matter of educational philosophy. "And the payments to ensure silence," Miller countered coolly. "Were those part of your philosophy as well?" Vance stiffened abruptly. "I have no knowledge of any such thing." Miller remained impassive, her eyes never leaving his. She withdrew her phone from her pocket, placed it centrally on the table and activated the display with a single tap. A real-time aerial transmission from a news helicopter filled the screen, depicting the green cycle plant fully engulfed in raging flames. Judge Richard Brooks is presently at the industrial site, Miller informed him evenly, closely observing every flicker of reaction on his face. He is systematically eradicating all traces, the documents, the digital storage, the entire historical record. Vance stared transfixed at the blazing imagery, his eyes expanding in undisguised horror. "He's eliminating loose ends, Arthur," Miller pressed on, deliberately using his given name to heighten his discomfort. "He is obliterating any evidence connecting him to these offenses. And when a figure like Brooks exhausts physical records to destroy, he begins eliminating human ones." Vance swallowed convulsively, his throat working visibly. "He wouldn't go that far." "He already has," Miller asserted without hesitation, weaving the deception flawlessly. "Our search teams are combing his chambers as we speak. We've uncovered correspondence. He is positioning you as a scapegoat, Arthur. When his empire crumbles, he will insist the entire scheme originated with you, that you manipulated the students, you fabricated the documentation, and he remained a guileless relative oblivious to the depths of the corruption. It was an age-old tactic in criminal circles, yet for a spineless individual like Vance, it proved catastrophically persuasive. All remaining color fled his features. He knew Brooks intimately. He knew the judge possessed a ruthlessness to sacrifice anyone, even kin, for survival. "I was simply obeying directives," Vance whispered faintly. "He warned that failures to assist Tyler would prompt the board to terminate my employment. I have a pension at stake. I have mortgage obligations." "Then safeguard your own interest," Miller counseled coolly. "Brooks is incinerating his avenues of escape. You must construct your own. Provide concrete proof of compulsion. Provide irrefutable evidence establishing Brooks as the mastermind." Vance darted nervous glances at the mirror, then back to the inferno displayed on the phone. He comprehended his utter abandonment. The judge would offer no salvation. The judge was the one igniting the blaze. "I have a safeguard," Vance announced, his tone unsteady. "What manner of safeguard?" "I anticipated," Vance moistened his parched lips nervously, "that Brooks would eventually betray me. He operates like a predator. Therefore, I preserved something. In my office, concealed directly behind the Educator of the Year plaque, there exists a concealed wall safe." Miller signaled discreetly toward the mirror. Two agents departed the observation area immediately to convey the precise location to the ongoing search operation at the school. "What does the safe contain, Arthur?" "A compact digital audio recorder. I habitually record every official meeting, a standard precaution against potential litigation." He drew a ragged breath, the admissions pouring forth uncontrollably. "I retained the recording from last month's encounter when Brooks entered my office unannounced. He didn't merely suggest including Tyler on the project, he issued a direct command. He stated explicitly that Jasmine's research posed a severe threat to his personal financial concerns. He claimed that allowing her to present those findings publicly would cost him millions in losses. He ordered me to neutralize her efforts completely." Miller lifted an eyebrow in measured surprise. "You possess an audio capture of Judge Richard Brooks openly admitting his desire to suppress valid scientific data in order to safeguard his monetary interest?" "Yes," Vance confirmed with frantic nods, "and he issued direct threats against me personally. He vowed to unearth and publicize my decade-old gambling indebtedness if I declined compliance. It represented unequivocal documentation of premeditated collusion. It obliterated any potential claim of mere oversight or unwitting prejudice on his part. It demonstrated clear malicious intent and advanced planning." "That constitutes a promising initial offering," Miller acknowledged. "However, it falls short of securing complete immunity. You have facilitated his actions for years. You have empowered a persistent tormentor. You have systematically eroded a young woman's sense of security and worth." "I possess additional information," Vance exclaimed, desperation surging. "It extends far beyond the school confines. The corruption permeates the entire municipality. The framework is thoroughly compromised." "Who else benefits?" Miller inquired pointedly. "Who else receives compensation from Brooks's resources?" Vance cast a fearful glance toward the door, as if anticipating imminent retribution. He inclined forward, reducing his volume to a conspiratorial murmur. "The sheriff,"
Vance disclosed urgently. Officer Harlan served merely a fee enforcer, but Sheriff Donovan, he systematically disregards complaints regarding illegal dumping. He deliberately reroutes evening patrols away from the Green Cycle facility, enabling disposal trucks to unload contaminated waste undetected under cover of darkness. Miller's expression grew more intense. Sheriff Donovan occupied the highest law enforcement role in the entire county. Donovan collects regular payments, Vance hurried onward. Monthly envelopes of cash, transported in an athletic bag and exchanged in the high school locker facilities amid football matches. I observed the transaction personally on one occasion, Brooks handing it directly underneath the spectator bleachers. The scope of the conspiracy vastly exceeded initial assessments. It transcended a single corrupt judge and a compliant administrator. It formed an interlocking triumvirate of authority, judicial, educational, and police. They had constructed an impregnable citadel of graft designed solely to hide and perpetuate their toxic emprise. Very well, Miller concluded, standing abruptly. She retrieved the dossier. You have at last made a prudent decision, Arthur, she remarked with chilling detachment. Finally, she proceeded to the exit. Wait, Vance intoed, his reins rattling as he strained forward. What becomes of me? Will I receive a cooperation agreement? Miller halted and turned back, her features betraying no trace of empathy. That will depend entirely on the recording's contents, she stated harshly, and upon whether the community can ever absolve you for bartering their children's well-being in exchange for your comfortable retirement. She secured the heavy steel door with finality, abandoning Vance to confront his solitary reflection. He gazed into the mirror, no longer perceiving the esteemed principal. He confronted a man who had passively observed a conflagration until its flames inevitably engulfed him as well. Beyond the confines of the room, Miller activated her radio transmitter. Director Langford, she reported crisply, we have acquired conclusive proof. You will wish to deploy a team to the sheriff's headquarters immediately. We have a compromised insignia to retrieve. The Oak Creek Community Center post with a precarious electric strain.
Tonight, Judge Richard Brooks commanded the podium, his appearance rumpled and streaked with grime, embodying the martyr role with flawless deception. They invaded our town, Brooks thundered, fingers clenched around the lectern. Federal agents, meddling strangers, they battered down the gates of a hometown enterprise to cripple our livelihoods. They aim to close Green Cycle, steal your jobs, and dictate how Oak Creek handles its own affairs. The audience, largely elderly loyalists who had backed him for generations, erupted in fervent support. To them, he embodied the target of bureaucratic tyranny. Brooks acknowledged them with a nod, thriving on their outrage. Then the rear doors flew wide. Marcus Langford entered alongside Jasmine. No entourage, no armaments, just a determined father, his daughter, and a laptop. This is a private session, Brooks snarled, perspiration burning his eyes. Leave now. This qualifies as a public town hall, Richard, Marcus countered, his tone slicing through the din. Jasmine Carter holds residency rights per the town charter. She commands the platform. Security! Brooks howled. Yet the local constable, a longtime ally of Marcus's late father, folded his arms and refused to budge. Jasmine ascended the stage. She disregarded Brooks's venomous glare and connected her drive to the projector. The display sprang alive. Judge Brooks convinced you the government seeks your harm, Jasmine declared, her delivery unwavering. He deceived you. We're present because Green Cycle is poisoning you. Lies! Brooks surged forward, but Marcus halted him with a gaze of sheer, intimidating command. Jasmine activated a command. A town map materialized, blue pathways morphing into crimson veins. This traces the groundwater pathway from the facility's illicit waste site, Jasmine clarified. Arsenic has infiltrated the earth for years, yet last year the contamination migrated. The scarlet blotch expanded across the projection, engulfing not only the impoverished South Side, but penetrating Heritage Hills, the affluent enclave housing Brooks's most devoted backers. I've superimposed the cancer records, Jasmine continued. Vivid yellow markers materialized, densest amid the upscale residences. Verified leukemia and kidney failure diagnoses. Silence descended like a shroud. Political rhetoric dissolved. Mortal peril dominated. From the third row, Eleanor Hayes, the community's revered elder, rose deliberately. She steadied herself on her cane, finger quivering as it aimed at the podium. "Richard," she uttered, her fragile timbre resonating throughout, "you assured us the plant posed no danger." Brooks regarded him imploringly. "Eleanor, I beg you, it's a fabricated assault." "My grandson," Eleanor cut in, tears tracing her cheeks. "Tommy played along the stream near your facility. Leukemia claimed him last Christmas." She advanced a pace. "Physicians called it misfortune, yet this map reveals 3 more lads from his block succumbed identically." She drew a ragged, sob-like inhalation. "My grandson lies dead. Did you cause it, Richard?" The charge lingered, total and devastating. Brooks parted his lips, yet silence prevailed. He stared at the map, then the sorrowful matron. For the initial occasion, the townsfolk perceived no jurist. They beheld a fiend. Dawn's light filtered into Oak Creek High School corridors, yet offered no solace to Tyler Brooks. He passed through the entrance doors, clad in his varsity jacket, collar flipped, shades perched, anticipating the customary deference, the ingrained dread.
Tyler Brooks anticipated the usual deference, the crowd parting as he strode through. Instead, he encountered an impenetrable barrier of quiet. The corridor brimmed with students, yet utterly silent. No one averted their gazes to the floor any longer. They met his eyes directly. Their faces held no trace of fear, only a profound, chilling disdain. Tyler halted at his locker. His trembling fingers struggled with the dial. He bungled the combination, keys slipping from his grasp and clattering down. "Nice coordination, Brooks," a voice mocked from nearby. Tyler whirled around. It belonged to Malik, the sophomore he had roughly shoved into a locker merely the previous week. Normally, Malik would flee. Today, he held firm, arms folded, casually propped against the wall. "Keep quiet," Tyler retorted, but the words emerged without their customary edge. "Or else?" Malik inquired with serene assurance. "Your uncle no longer dictates the rules here. Haven't you seen the reports?" Tyler went rigid. He hadn't glanced at any news. He had presumed his uncle would resolve everything. Uncle Richard always resolved everything. He yanked off his sunglasses. "My uncle controls this town." "Your uncle contaminated this town," a girl from chemistry lab interjected, advancing. "And you assisted him." Tyler scanned the surroundings. The ring tightened. The quarterback deliberately turned away. Cheerleaders murmured covertly. The social order of Oak Creek High had crumbled in a single night. Tyler stood amid the debris. "Stay back," Tyler yelled, banning his locker shut. "You're all insane." He shoved past bodies, frantically seeking refuge. He exploded into Mr. Ramirez's classroom. Conversation ceased instantly. Jasmine Carter occupied the front row seat. Her lock-top glowed open before her. She raised her head, bruises faded, gaze sharp and unyielding as stone. "You," Tyler growled, "you've destroyed it all." "Your uncle is presently bargaining surrender terms with federal authorities," Jasmine stated, her words slicing cleanly. "You should perhaps focus on your own predicament, Tyler Brooks," a resonant voice boomed from the entrance. Tyler pivoted sharply. 2 federal agents flanked the new principal in the doorway. These were not the affable resource officers he once bantered with. These carried an aura of calculated lethality. "Tyler Brooks," the senior agent announced, "you are placed under arrest." "Arrest?" Tyler emitted a manic laugh. "For what? Unkindness? That's hardly illegal."
Or assault resulting in bodily harm, the agent enumerated, advancing with restraints ready, vandalism of federal evidence and intimidation of witnesses. Tyler retreated until his back met the whiteboard. "No, I'm underage. You lack authority." "You're 17, the agent responded icily. "Considering the gravity of the offenses, the prosecutor intends to charge you as an adult." The truth crashed over Tyler like an onslaught. He appealed to Mr. Ramirez. "Tell them! Help me!" Mr. Ramirez stared fixedly at his register. "Face away," the agent directed. Terror seized control. Tyler fled. He vaulted a desk, scattering books, grasping toward the rear door. "Pursuit!" the agent reacted with alarming velocity. He seized Tyler by the varsity jacket collar, twisting him and driving him into the wall. Then a leg sweep. Crash! Tyler struck the linoleum face first, immobilized precisely where he had once forced Jasmine down days earlier. The reversal was complete. "Release me!" Tyler shrieked, flailing wildly. "My uncle will end you!" "Cease resistance." The handcuffs clicked firmly. Tyler sprawled in the grime, tears flowing. "Please," he whined feebly. "It was only amusement." The agent lifted him upright. Tyler dangled limply, feet trailing. The whole class observed in silence. No triumph, no rebellion. Merely a sniveling, broken tormentor, hauled away to confront retribution. Nearing the threshold, Tyler glanced back at Jasmine. He found no rage in her expression, only compassion, and that wounded deeper than restraints. "It wasn't my doing," Tyler wailed, voice fracturing along the hall. "It was Uncle Richard. He commanded me. He forced the destruction. Arrest him!" The desperate admission reverberated against the metal lockers. He was sacrificing family to preserve himself. Jasmine observed until he vanished from sight. She faced the astonished students. "Please open to page 42, Jasmine instructed evenly. "We have material to cover." The atmosphere in courtroom 1 carried the scent of aged timber and frantic perspiration. Judge Richard Brooks occupied the elevated bench, yet resembled a man floundering in vast water. His private counsel, Pinter, stood nearby, mopping his brow with a handkerchief, appearing poised to flee at any moment. "Sign it," Brooks demanded, his voice hoarse and strained. He pushed the paper across the gleaming mahogany surface. "This emergency order prohibits federal seizure of county documents without a preliminary local review. It grants us 48 hours. "Richard," Pinter murmured urgently, casting anxious glances toward the imposing doors. "It won't succeed. Federal investigators are already inside the courthouse. You must yield." "I do not yield," Brooks roared, pounding his fist on the desk. "I embody the law in this county. They cannot lay hands on me within my own chambers." He seized his fountain pen, grip trembling so fiercely that ink spattered across the page like dark droplets. He pressed the tip down forcefully, attempting to etch his dominance into the document one final time. The massive double doors burst inward with explosive force. Marcus Langford stood framed in the opening. He came alone, devoid of protective gear, clad only in a pristine dark suit. In his grasp was a solitary page bearing the embossed gold seal of the Supreme Court. Brooks looked up, eyes frantic. "Bailiff, detain that intruder! Contempt of court!" The bailiff, who had loyally served Brooks for 2 decades, regarded Marcus, then the judge. With deliberate slowness, he moved aside from the bench and crossed his arms resolutely. "You stand without allies here, Richard," Marcus declared, advancing down the central aisle, each footstep resounding like the inexorable advance of time. "Depart!" Brooks shrieked, rising abruptly, his judicial robes flaring dramatically. "This remains my domain. I will ruin you." "Your authority concluded 10 minutes prior," Marcus responded evenly, halting at the prosecution table. He raised the paper. This is a writ of quo warranto, endorsed by the Chief Justice. Your judicial powers have been revoked. You are now a private citizen facing federal charges." "Falsehoods!" Brooks spat venomously. He turned to Pinter. "Raise an objection." Pinter snapped his briefcase shut. "I regret this, Richard." The attorney exited swiftly, abandoning Brooks alone atop his elevated seat. The truth fractured Brooks's composure. The barriers that had shielded him were collapsing inward. He envisioned the visages of those he had contaminated crowding the vacant gallery. He beheld Jasmine's features. "I constructed this community," Brooks muttered faintly. "I performed the necessary acts." "You contaminated a population for gain," Marcus countered. "Descend from the bench. It is finished." Brooks foresaw his downfall, the degradation of prison garb. "No," he exhaled. "I refuse judgment from you." His hand plunged beneath the desk. "Do not," Marcus cautioned. Brooks ignored the warning. His fingers grasped the chilled metal of the .38 revolver concealed under the drawer. He wrenched it free. "Retreat!" Brooks shrieked, aiming the firearm at the nation's top prosecutor. The bailiff scrambled for shelter. Marcus remained steadfast, gazing straight into the muzzle. "Lower it, Richard. You only worsen your position." "I alone determine the conclusion," Brooks howled. The report thundered deafeningly. The flash briefly lit the shadowed chamber. Marcus stood unharmed, the round embedded in the paneling 3 feet left of him. Brooks's aim had faltered. His hands shook uncontrollably, his composure shattered. Even armed lethally, he proved inept. Before a second shot, federal agents surged into the space. Brooks fixated on the pistol, then on the unscathed Marcus Langford. Overwhelmed by his own futility, he released the gun. It clanged to the floor. Agents converged, dragging him across the mahogany and forcing his face into the carpeting where he had once pronounced sentences on countless others. "Richard Brooks, you are under arrest for attempted assassination of a federal officer," an agent proclaimed. The restraints snapped closed. Marcus ascended the steps to the bench, gazing downward at the struggling figure. Court stands adjourned. 2 hours afterwards, the Brooks residence underwent meticulous examination. Federal personnel navigated the expansive Victorian home like antibodies combating a pathogen, labeling artworks and crating valuables. The dwelling, formerly an impregnable bastion of insulated privilege, now evoked a tomb. Jasmine accompanied her father into the judge's secluded study. The Financial Forensics Unit detected an anomaly in the architectural plans, an agent noted, indicating a mahogany bookshelf. "The measurements are inconsistent." "Force it open," Marcus directed. Agents bored through the mechanism. The shelving pivoted outward, exposing a reinforced steel portal embedded in the structure. It exceeded a mere safe. It constituted a full walk-in repository. The specialist decoded the combination, and the portal creaked ajar. Within, bundled currency filled the racks, illicit payments from Green Cycle Solutions. Yet Marcus bypassed the funds, his attention fixed on the cabinets along the rear. "Dad," Jasmine remarked, entering the confined area, "examine the markings." The drawers bore no fiscal dates. They denoted commencement years. Class of 2000, class of 2005. Jasmine extracted a dossier randomly. Devin Harris, valedictorian contender, 2012. Affixed to the records was a notation in Brooks's erratic penmanship. Suspected disruptor, excessively eloquent, flagged for youth offense scrutiny. She turned the sheet. A fabricated minor drug violation endorsed by a compromised deputy, timed precisely before university submissions. "He pumps fuel now," Jasmine murmured, voice unsteadily. "He always claimed framing." She retrieved another. "Sophia Morales, admitted to Stanford. Annotation, alert immigration regarding guardians." Sophia had vanished that summer. Marcus reviewed dossier after dossier, patterns repeated identically, exceptional students of color methodically sabotaged.
It transcended mere bigotry, Marcus observed, tone laced with revulsion. It amounted to selective eradication. He was pruning. Brooks had systematically eliminated prospects for any black or Latino youth displaying superiority. For 20 years he wielded influence to derail promising trajectories, erecting an impenetrable barrier and interring proof beneath his home. "Hold on," Jasmine paused, eyeing the lowest compartment. "Archives, 1990 to 1995. Her hand grazed a discolored folder at the rear. The label, faded typewriter script. Langford, Marcus. Jasmine exited the chamber. She presented the folder to her father. Marcus unsealed it. Contained was an image of his young self, an ardent public advocate with defiant spark. Below, Brooks's scrawl, defiant, ungovernable, professional path, threatening, recommend fabricating proof in the Wilson matter for revocation of license. Marcus followed the script with his fingertip. He recalled the Wilson affair, the baseless allegation that almost ended his vocation. He had battled relentlessly to endure, ignorant of the orchestrator. "He sought to stop you," Jasmine whispered. "He attempted to terminate your profession at its inception." Marcus sealed the folder, jaw rigid. "He attempted, and his failure places me here now." He surveyed the array of folders, the myriad unrealized potentials. "He faltered against me, but prevailed against them," Marcus intoned, voice grave and menacing. "He deprived society of doctors who might have healed them, advocates who might have shielded them." He addressed the agents. "Catalog everything, every fragment. Our charges extend beyond graft. We allege a 2-decade scheme to infringe civil liberties. Locate every individual named in these records. We will expose this abomination's full extent to the nation." Marcus left the repository, treading over heaps of tainted currency, as though mere refuse. "He craved enduring renown," Marcus remarked. "Now he shall receive it." The United States District Court was nothing like the provincial venue where Richard Brooks had dominated for 2 decades. Here, paneling gleamed in deep walnut. The wall emblem depicted the federal golden eagle, and the atmosphere maintained a clinical, unrelenting chill.
There were no accommodating bailiffs in this venue, only United States Marshals, mute and formidable. Richard Brooks occupied the defense table. The judicial robes had vanished, supplanted by a vivid orange federal prison uniform that draped loosely on his diminished body. He appeared contracted, bereft of his custom attire and commanding gavel. He was merely a bitter elderly man bound in restraints. A few tables distant sat Tyler Brooks. He likewise donned orange. He steadfastly avoided his uncle's gaze. Jasmine Carter occupied the foremost gallery row, her hand placed lightly on her father's forearm. Marcus Langford maintained a composed vigil, observing the judicial apparatus, the very system he directed, execute its function. "The witness may continue," Federal Judge Vance directed. Tyler Brooks inclined toward the microphone. His tone was frail and pleading, devoid of any remnant of his former athletic swagger. He had accepted a plea agreement, 5 years in juvenile confinement for comprehensive cooperation. To preserve himself, he needed to dismantle the figure who had shaped him. "He instructed me that it was inconsequential," Tyler stated, dabbing his nose with the rear of his shackled wrist. "He claimed the residents in the hollows were mere chattel. He asserted they existed solely for exploitation." "And regarding the project," the prosecutor inquired, "why did you demolish Jasmine Carter's work?" "Because Judge Richard Brooks commanded it." Tyler wept. "He insisted she was approaching too near the truth. He declared intelligent young women like her threatened the family enterprise. He directed me to shatter her resolve until she abandoned it." Brooks fixated forward, jaw clenching wordlessly.
betrayal by his own kin, the youth he had cultivated as successor, constituted the ultimate humiliation. "I never wished to despise them," Tyler murmured, addressing the jurors. "He instilled that hatred in me." It offered a feeble justification, yet it cemented Brooks's doom. The jury conferred for under 2 hours. Upon return, the foreperson arose. "On the count of racketeering, guilty. On the count of environmental jeopardy, guilty. On the count of civil rights deprivation under color of authority, guilty." The verdict resounded 24 times, "Guilty, guilty, guilty." Judge Vance peered over his lenses at Brooks. "Mr. Brooks, you were vested with the hallowed obligation of jurisprudence. Instead, you wielded it as an instrument to contaminate a populace and intimidate youth. You commodified equity." Vance allowed the gravity to permeate. "I impose a term of 20 years in federal custody. Additionally, pursuant to asset forfeiture statutes, the Brooks Family Trust is forthwith confiscated. All funds, holdings, and equities shall be liquidated. The resultant proceeds will fund a health foundation for those afflicted by green cycle pollution." A collective inhalation echoed through the chamber. It delivered the fatal strike. Brooks faced not merely incarceration, he forfeited his inheritance. He would finance treatments for the malignancies he had inflicted. The gavel descended. Bang! It reverberated like gunfire. The marshals advanced. They elevated Brooks upright. His waist chains clattered, the noise of a former incarcerator now incarcerated. As they escorted him along the central passage, Brooks trudged past the front seating. He halted. The marshals pulled, yet he resisted. He fixed his gaze on Marcus Langford. Brooks's eyes were inflamed, brimming with an inextinguishable loathing. "You believe this alters the order?" Brooks rasped venomously. "You prevailed this time, Langford, but the framework was erected by figures like myself. It endures." Jasmine experienced a shiver along her spine. Even vanquished, the beast retained fangs. Marcus remained unflinching. He uttered no outburst. He arose gradually, looning over the toppled jurist. He straightened his necktie, embodying fully a renewed, inexorable equity. "Then I shall reform it," Marcus responded, tone serene yet unequivocal, piece by piece, proceeding by proceeding, until no space remains for individuals like you. Brooks curled his lip in scorn, but a marshal propelled him onward. "Proceed, prisoner." The portals sealed behind him, engulfing the tainted judge in the obscurity of the correctional apparatus. Jasmine regarded her father. "Has it concluded?" Marcus surveyed the vacant defense station, then the flag in the corner. "For him, yes," Marcus affirmed.
For us, the journey is only beginning. The lingering darkness over Oak Creek High School did not dissipate in a single night, but the atmosphere finally felt livable once more. Principal Harold Vance had departed, succeeded by Mrs. Salter, a warm administrator who welcomed students at the entrance by their names instead of reducing them to mere numbers. The atmosphere of intimidation imposed by the Brooks regime gradually faded away. In the chemistry laboratory, oppressive quiet gave way to the vibrant buzz of authentic interest. 3 months following the trial, the school convened a special gathering. Jasmine Carter took the stage, the very platform where she had endured public degradation. This occasion brought no mockery. Mrs. Salter presented her with a substantial glass trophy, the State Science Innovator Prize. "This rightfully belongs to the young woman who deserved it half a year ago," Mrs. Salter declared, her tone filled with genuine warmth, "and to the researcher who rescued our community." The ovation thundered through the auditorium.
It transcended courteous applause. It represented a communal release of remorse and emerging admiration. Yet Jasmine chose not to retain the monetary award. She grasped the microphone, her delivery confident. "I am contributing the $5,000 stipend," Jasmine proclaimed, "to establish the Science for Justice Fund. It will supply laboratory resources to learners in the hollows. For ability is evenly spread, yet access is not." That afternoon, as the hall emptied, a pair approached Jasmine. They appeared exhausted, clad in faded work attire, a sharp departure from the costly garments Judge Richard Brooks once favored. They were Tyler's parents. They bore no monstrous appearance. They seemed shattered. Tyler's mother fidgeted with a handkerchief in her grasp. "Jasmine," she breathed, avoiding the young woman's gaze, "we wish to express regret." Tyler's father completed the thought, his words heavy with contrition. "We permitted Richard to dominate. We believed he was securing Tyler's prospects. We failed to recognize the person he was molding our son into until it was irreversible. We disappointed him, and we disappointed you." Jasmine regarded them. She might have unleashed fury. She might have held them accountable for each mark and slur. Yet she perceived their suffering, the anguish of guardians who had wakened to how their inaction had fostered a tormentor. "Do not seek forgiveness from me," Jasmine replied gently. "Direct it to Tyler. He must understand he can rise above the legacy he bears." She departed, leaving them to their remorse. She possessed a path to forge. Tucked in her bag were 2 letters received that morning. One displayed the scarlet emblem of Harvard University. The other featured the embossed insignia of the White House, extending an invitation to serve on the President's Youth Advisory Panel for Environmental Matters. 1 year on, golden sunlight bathed the football field. The graduating class of 2024, arrayed in navy caps and gowns, tassels soaring like ocean swells. Jasmine Carter occupied the speaker's stand as valedictorian. She surveyed the assembly, the peers who had once overlooked her, the instructors who had once hesitated to intervene, the town gradually mending. She calibrated the microphone. She required no prepared remarks. "We are often told high school concerns self-discovery," Jasmine commenced, "yet my lesson differed. I discovered that identity holds little value without the resolve to protect it." She allowed a beat. In the foremost seats, Marcus Langford sat. The Attorney General of the United States had rearranged his commitments. He ignored his device. He leaned attentively, gaze fixed upon his daughter. "We witnessed profound shadows in this place," Jasmine proceeded. "We observed how readily authority can suppress reality. We observed how prestige can conceal evil. Yet we gained another insight as well." She addressed the incoming freshmen in the stands, the forthcoming cohort. "We realized justice demands participation. It is not observed passively. It is not awaited. It is not rescued by an influential parent arriving dramatically." She cast a brief, affectionate glance at Marcus, a subtle smile forming. Marcus emitted a quiet laugh, discreetly brushing away moisture from his eye. "I was fortunate," Jasmine resumed, her tone gravening. "I possessed support. Yet equity must not hinge on fortune. It must not rely on parental status. Authentic equity emerges when everyday individuals, those like us, decline to avert their eyes. It manifests when we prioritize verity over ease." She lifted her chin proudly. "Await no savior. Become the voice that rises in quiet rooms. That defines your inheritance." Mortarbots launched skyward. The roar was overwhelming. An hour afterward, attendees scattered. Marcus and Jasmine strolled beside the former industrial site. The charred remnants of the Green Cycle facility had been razed. In their stead, vehicles removed vast quantities of polluted earth, yet the transformation shone clearest in the waterway. They paused at the public lake's brink, linked to the prior retention basin.
A year earlier, it had appeared turbid and slick. Now, purification units, funded partly by Jasmine's initiative, operated softly. The surface gleamed pure. Ducks glided near the reeds. Marcus inhaled deeply of the fresh breeze. He regarded Jasmine. He no longer beheld the child he once narrated tales to at bedtime. He no longer beheld a sufferer. He beheld a fighter who confronted inferno and tempered a blade from its heat. "You accomplished this," Marcus murmured softly. "Not federal agents, not tribunals. You." Jasmine selected a pebble and skipped it over the expanse. It rebounded thrice, generating waves that radiated, reaching all banks. "We accomplished it," Jasmine amended. "I merely cast the initial pebble." Marcus draped an arm across her shoulders. "And that," he affirmed, "is the method of transforming society." They lingered as dusk fell, observing the expanding circles. Aware that prior wounds endured, yet the toxin had vanished. The water shone pristine, and after prolonged absence, the mirrored image returned to them flawless. Jasmine Carter demonstrated that veracity serves as the supreme armament against oppression, and leadership requires no designation, merely the courage to shatter hush. Her utterance not only saved a community, it ignited a broader shift. Have you ever stood solitary for righteousness? Share your experience in the comments. If you hold that equity merits the struggle, press like, distribute this content to motivate others, and follow for more inspiring stories.